Hi class. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about note-taking strategies. I've put a form on your class pages that you can take a look at, but I also wanted to explain them to you so that throughout the year, both in your reading writing class and your speaking and listening class, you'll find that it'll be useful to go back and watch this video and also look at the form I'll be putting on class pages again and again to see different types of note-taking strategies so that you're successful. Basically, I'm going to talk about 6 different types. The first type is going to be abbreviations. We've talked about that a little bit in all your classes. When you abbreviate something, it basically means that you shorten the word. So some common examples are maybe for numbers, instead of saying the word million when you hear a lecture, and the teacher's saying 12 million people or $10 million. Instead of saying 12 million, you see how long that takes me to write. It's so much easier just to say 12M. And I know in the context of the conversation that 12M is going to be 12 million when I go back during study hall or back at my house and I see that, and I'm studying my notes for the exam, I remember that that's 12 million. Another example for really common ones that we use a lot, you'll see your teachers use these sometimes. Because is B/C. Without is also a very common one. That's W/O. And this just saves us a few split seconds while we're taking our notes, but it builds up over time and it makes your note taking much faster and much more effective. One more I use a lot. I use for and, I might use an equal sign. Might use a plus sign. If I'm going to say for example, you can also use the equal sign for that, or you can use a arrow and then I point to what my example is going to be. Another common one for that is EX. You see me use on the board sometimes. So that's the first way to use abbreviations. You'll find that on the form that's posted on your class pages. The second type is, or the second note is distinguishing main ideas from supporting points. So when you're listening to a talk like you're listening to it now, I'm giving you points. This is point number 2, the fact that you should distinguish between main ideas and supporting points. And then my supporting points are my examples of why or how to do something. So make sure as you're listening to an instructor, they might say dogs are the best pets. And that's my main point. My supporting point to prove that dogs are the best pets might be they are loyal. Now we use that example at the beginning of the year when we're doing paragraph structure, but the same thing. You have a supporting point, you have the main point. And you want to distinguish those. The reason why is the third note-taking strategy, my third point, is going to be use a visual organization strategy. So when I take notes, something good to do, especially if it's a lecture, and I know it's only going to be a lecture, not just taking class notes, I'll split my notebook into 2 parts. I'll put the main ideas and I'll put supporting points. These are also examples on the right-hand side. What this does is I can start splitting up my information and distinguishing between the main points. Those are the main things I need to follow, and then whatever supporting points I can add, I can. I don't have to add every supporting point, but I'll add enough so I understand what's going on when I go back home at night to review my notes. But for example, we're talking about families in one of my classes. We could say many families in America are changing. And then while I'm giving this lecture, I'm saying many families in America are changing. For example, families are having less children. Also, divorce rates in America have increased significantly. This means that more children are being raised by a single parent. That's what you would hear, so how would you divide that information up? Well, we have our main idea that many families in America are changing, the 2 points that I gave to support that would be having less children, and I'm going to start abbreviating now like I mentioned before. I'll show you how to do that. So instead of saying less, I might just say decrease, and I could say kids instead of children, for example. That's a shorter word to say. Another supporting point is that there's a greater number of kids or more children raised by one parent. And if you remember what I said earlier, I said divorce rates have increased, therefore causing more children to be raised by a single parent. I was able to shorten that into a shorter phrase. And so that's an effective note-taking strategy. Those are the 3 main ones I wanted to talk about. I'll end on, if this was my note here, the last thing is to use symbols. The reason why we use symbols, or that it can help us greatly, you see that I use a lot of arrows, as I do here. We talked about using the equal sign, provide symbols, but also you can underline things that emphasizes something. You can draw circles around things to emphasize things. If you're writing in a sentence like this, having less children, you could circle in the words, and if you wanted to make sure that to be reminded of that, you could draw arrows to the part that you want to be reminded of in the future. All these things are great. Use as many symbols as possible because they shorten note-taking time. You recognize the symbols. You know that means it should be emphasized. You know that's important. So when you go back to study, you know what you should focus on most of all. Another good one I'll leave you with is doing stars. Stars also signify important pieces of information. Oftentimes on my main ideas, I always star them, so they're my main idea, and I know that that's what I should focus on, and my supporting points are less important. So again, watch the video, watch it again over the course of the year. This is all organized and laid out much better on the document on your class pages, but just so you understand what that document is, go back and watch this video so you know. Thank you. 3 more that are very basic. One, when you're writing notes, especially on notebook paper, you have lined paper. Some of you I see sometimes, I don't know why, but you take your notes all over the place. You might write them over here, you write them over here. Don't do that. When you have a notebook paper with lines, keep yourself organized. Even if you're writing fast, write your notes on the line. Keep them organized. It will help you so much when you're studying later on. That's another quick one. When you're taking notes and you're in a hurry, and then you can't keep up with the teacher, and you accidentally write notes on lamb, and you think, oh man, I meant line on line. How am I ever going to remember that when I go back home and study tonight? Instead of going back and trying to erase the word lamb, and you're writing in pen or pencil, just scratch it and then write, oh, I did it again, scratch it and then write line. Okay, don't worry about keeping your notes perfect the first time. You always are supposed to revise your notes when you get home at night. And what this does, this takes the disorder of what this note is now, and now you can write it more clearly and on a straight line, and you can organize it like we talked about before between your main idea and your supporting point, and you can give example Y keeps notes organized. Okay, and you can go back and revise your notes in that way. And lastly, perhaps most important,